Hi everyone, I'm Gertie, and today I have something very exciting for you. This is a video sew along for the Charm Patterns Marilyn jeans. Now I do want to note that this is some footage that we filmed a few years ago, so you'll notice that it's in our older style than we use here for videos at Charm Patterns now. But I know that making jeans and sewing denim has a lot of specialty techniques that I'm sure you'll be excited to see on video, so I wanted to make sure that we released it for you. So I hope you enjoy it. Okay, so let's talk about the supplies you need for your jeans. Fabric-wise, you are going to need some denim. Now, we did a lot of our samples with stretch denim, which usually just has about 1 to 2% Lycra blended in. Now, 50s jeans, if you're really going authentic, you could do non-stretch denim. Just keep in mind that you may need to adjust the fit just a little bit because they're going to fit more closely, more rigidly without that Lycra. So keep it in mind. You might need to add a little bit to the side seams if you use non-stretch denim. Okay, so also you are going to need a second fabric, a lightweight cotton. This is used for the inside of your waistband as well as for the lower half of your front pockets. Additionally, you could use this for your contrast cuff, which is what I'm going to be doing today. Now, this can be a quilting cotton, broadcloth, just a sort of light to medium weight cotton is perfect for this, cotton woven, no stretch. You'll also want a woven fusible interfacing that's used in a couple places to stabilize the pocket openings as well as the zipper openings. And it really does help if it's woven, so see if you can find lightweight woven with fusible, so as glue on one side. You will also need a metal jean zipper for your jeans. We recommend an 8-inch jean zipper. You will also need thread to match your fabric for the main construction, so blue or black, whatever color denim you're using. And then we used white thread for our top stitching details. We went ahead and just used a regular weight all-purpose poly thread for our top stitching. I know a lot of people like to use a top stitching weight thread, but we really found we got great results with just your regular all-purpose poly thread. You'll also want to have a microtex or universal needle that matches the weight of your fabric. Again, because we didn't use top stitching thread, we found that we didn't need special needles. Okay, you will also need some specialty jeans supplies. You need your jeans buttons. You need 2 of these. They have 2 parts to them, and they often come with cute little designs like the star design. Then you will also need rivets. We used 8mm double cap rivets, which are easy to get. This is a Dritz brand package of rivets. And we're going to be showing you how to use this lovely piece of machinery today, which we really love, called the Cam Snap Table Press, which can set both of these in, the rivets and the jeans buttons. So we'll be demonstrating how to do that, but you can also use one of these Dritz rivet setting tools. Also, I always recommend having an emotional support snack nearby. Kettle corn is my drug of choice lately, so highly recommend. As you go into your jeans journey, just have a little something ready to go. Okay, so I wanted to show you the pattern pieces minimized to a smaller scale, just so you can get the lay of the land. So here is the pant front. This is the crotch curve. That's the slanted pocket right there. Pant back, again, crotch curve. There's a slant at the top here because this is where the yoke gets sewn on, right there, to form the complete piece. Let's talk about the pocket pieces for the front. So you can kind of see how this all goes together. There's an upper pocket piece and a lower front pocket piece that gets sewn together. The upper one gets cut in denim, the lower one gets cut in your lightweight cotton to reduce bulk. There's also a line on these pieces where the zipper gets inserted right down the middle of the piece. You also have a zipper guard, which protects your skin from the zipper and it gets applied to the slash that we're going to make where the zipper gets inserted on this piece. Then the whole pant front gets placed over there and you can see how that piece rounds out the hip shape on the pant. Now you also have your waistband. This is a contour waistband, meaning it is slightly curved. You're going to cut one in your denim and then you're going to flip it over and cut the other one in your lightweight cotton so that the lightweight cotton is somewhat of a lining or a facing to go on the inside, again to reduce bulk. Now you have two cuff options, one for the full length pant and one for the capri length. These would be cut in your lightweight contrast cotton if that's the look you're going for. This is optional. You also have three back pocket pieces. One is the piece that you cut, has no design marked on it. You use this to cut your denim. And then we have two templates for the stitching. So if you want to do this loop-de-loop, you would transfer that onto this piece. If you want to do the V chevron shape, again, same thing, transfer that onto your main back pocket piece. Alternatively, you don't have to do any top stitching if you don't want, but we did want to include some fun options. Finally, you have your belt loop piece. Now this is a long skinny piece and you can see it has these horizontal slash lines. We're going to sew one long belt loop and then cut it up into smaller pieces just because it's easier to deal with a long piece and then cut it into short pieces rather than try to sew those tiny pieces. So that's it. Once you look at it, it's not too overwhelming. We're going to get right into the sewing next. Okay, we're ready to jump right in with the sewing. So you start with the back pockets, and the reason for this is it's just easier to apply these pockets before you've sewn any of the seams. This is easier to do flat. So you're going to take your back pocket piece. We have already finished around all the edges and done the top stitching as well. So if you want to do a top stitching design, take your time, transfer the design, and just go very slowly with your contrast thread. We've already completed ours, so we're going to go right to sewing on the pocket. First thing you're going to do is from the wrong side of the pocket piece, we are going to turn in the seam allowances. So you can use a seam gauge if you like to make sure you're turning in 5/8 of an inch all the way around. Okay, now that I have the sides and lower edges turned in, I'm going to do the same thing with the upper edge. And this one can be finessed just slightly. I'm going to show you what I mean in just a second. So I'm turning it in 5/8 of an inch. And see how these upper edges just want to pop out a little bit at the sides? You can just kind of tweak this a little bit by rolling in that seam allowance and pressing again, so that we're not going to have any excess showing on the edges. All right, and once you're satisfied with how that looks, I'm going to do one more little press there. Then we're going to hem that upper edge of the pocket. Okay, so we're going to do some top stitching details. Jeans have a lot of top stitching on them, right? So you'll normally have an edge stitch and then top stitching next to it. So we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to stitch first at 1/8 of an inch from the folded edge and then again 1/4 of an inch from that. Okay, so take a look at any jeans you have in your closet. You'll see this sort of pattern repeats itself throughout the construction. All right, so one thing that I recommend is if you're not super confident with your top stitching or edge stitching, you might want to grab an edge stitch foot. For the Bernina, it's the number 10 foot. It just has this blade which helps you get a nice equidistant row of top stitching from your edge. But it's not totally necessary. You can also eyeball it if you like. Okay, so I'm aligning the fabric with the blade on the foot, and then I'm adjusting the needle so that it's 1/8 of an inch to the left of the blade. And I'm starting to stitch here on this edge. For these details, I like to use a slightly longer stitch length, so around 3 would be fine, 3 millimeters, where if you normally use 2.5, 3 would be good. I'm going to back stitch. Okay, so there is my first row of stitching. Okay, so now we're going to do the second row of top stitching 1/4 inch from the first. And for 1/4 inch top stitching, I like to use the edge of my presser foot to align with my marker there, which is the first line of stitching. And now I'm just going to readjust my needle so it's back in the center, aligned with the blade there. And again, you can back stitch here. And see how I'm aligning the edge of my foot with my stitching. Okay, so there's 2 rows of top stitching for this. And now we are going to sew the back pocket to the back jean. I always like to give everything a press after top stitching, just to help set the stitches a little bit. Now I'm going to take my pant back and I'm going to align my pocket with the marked edges. Those are provided for you on the pattern, so you can transfer those marks to your pant back, and then you'll be able to perfectly place your pocket here. So I'm going to pin it on, and then I'm going to edge stitch at 1/8 of an inch all the way around. All right, so I'm going to start stitching just slightly above the pocket, and then back stitch to secure, and then stitch all the way around. Okay, so my pocket is stitched on, and now we are going to apply the back yoke. So like we talked about in that last scene, one of those last scenes, this is the piece that completes the top of the back pant. So we're going to put these pieces right sides together. You have a notch to help you match them. Pin them together, and we're going to sew this at your regular seam allowance, 5/8 of an inch. And I'm going to keep using my white thread throughout the process here so that you can see the details as I'm stitching. But to be nitpicky, this is the part where you would want to switch back to your blue thread to match your jeans. Only the top stitching details would be done in your contrast thread. All right, so I sewed my seam, and then I also serged these edges together as one. So whatever seam finishing method you're using, you'll want to do that to finish those 2 seam allowances as one. And now we're going to press them down towards the pant back. And just from the right side, just make sure your seam line is nice and exposed there. Sometimes you can get like a little fold Okay, so now we're going to do our top stitching pattern that we did on the upper edge of the pocket next to this seam line to hold those seam allowances down. So first row of stitching is 1/8 of an inch from the seam. Again, using that edge stitch foot. And a slightly longer stitch length. And the next row of stitching is 1/4 inch from my last line of stitching. Okay, so there you go. Your yoke is sewn on and you have a complete back pant. Okay, so now that we have done the back pant, we're ready to start working on the pant front, which includes that zippered pocket construction. So the first thing we're going to do is stabilize this upper slanted edge of the pocket opening. Now, as you can probably imagine, this is not the straight grain of the fabric here. It's slightly on the bias, so it does get stretched out a little bit, especially in an area where you get a lot of wear and tear with, using your pockets, opening your zipper, etc. So what we like to do is stabilize this upper edge with fusible interfacing. So remember that fusible woven interfacing that we talked about in the supplies. You're going to grab that and you're going to cut a strip, 2 strips really, that are 1.25 inches wide, and they should be long enough to extend from the top slanted edge to the bottom of the slanted edge of that pocket. And we're going to apply this strip to the wrong side. So I'm going to grab my strip. I'm going to make sure I'm putting it glue side down. Sometimes it's hard with wovens to tell. Glue side down right there. And you can see I have a little excess here, so I'm going to trim that off. Like so. And it's always a good idea to use a press cloth when you're applying fusible interfacing, like this. And you can even give it a little spritz of water here if you like to, give it a little steam. All right, so now we're going to hold this down. This woven interfacing I'm using, I know from past experience that it takes a little while to apply, so I'm just going to hold it. Even maybe use a little steam here. When you're applying fusible like this, don't rub back and forth. Just hold it and then pick it up and hold in the next spot. And now you can check to make sure that it's applied. And here, this is what I was talking about. This fusible just takes a little bit longer than some others to adhere. So I'm just gonna wait it out. Okay. Next thing we're going to do is hem this slanted edge just like we did the upper edge of the back pocket. So you're going to turn it in 5/8 of an inch, which if you cut your interfacing in exactly 1.25, then it should just meet up. The edge of your fabric should meet up with the edge of the interfacing, since 5/8 is half of 1.25. Okay. So we're going to do that same top stitching pattern, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 inch from there. Okay, so there's our finished slant pocket edge. Next, we're going to construct the pocket that the zipper goes into. Okay, so we are ready to sew our front pockets. Now, I did just want to make sure to note that I'm really only showing you on one half of the pant because you really only need to see things once. So you saw one back leg, one back pocket, and I'm going to be showing you one front pocket. Of course, you will be doing two of each, one for each side, but I did just want to flag that because I'm going to be constructing the left front pocket, which has the zipper inserted into it. When you do the right front pocket, there will be no front zipper, okay? The zipper only goes into the left pocket. Okay, so let's get started sewing these pieces together. For each front pocket, you have your upper pocket piece cut in your denim, and then the lower pocket piece cut in a lightweight cotton. You are going to sew it along this diagonal seam. So put these right sides together, and you're at the 5/8 of an inch mark. You can see this little corner here. 5/8 of an inch mark, your fabric should line up just right. Okay, so let's stitch this at 5/8 of an inch. Okay, now I'm going to finish this seam using a serger. Okay, so I've sewn the seam and then serged those seam allowances as one. So now we are going to press the seam allowance down towards the lightweight cotton. Okay, and you should have marked lines on the right side of both pieces. I think I just pressed my upper one off, but you should have a line on the upper piece that extends down to the lower pocket piece, and this is where the zipper is going to be inserted. So if you don't have those lines marked, go make sure you get those marked. And if this is your right front pocket, this is all you have to do for these pieces. But now we're going to show you what to do for the left front pocket where we insert the zipper. Okay, so now we're going to insert that zipper. So there are a few steps to this. None of it is that hard. So just take your time, follow the instructions. You have this marked line, like I said, on your upper pocket piece extending down to your lower pocket piece. I just redrew in my upper one because I steamed it off accidentally. Then you are going to cut another strip of your fusible woven interfacing that is 1.75 inches wide, okay? So a little wider than our last one. It's that wide, and then now I'm going to trim it so that it's just 1/2 inch longer than my marked line. So I'm gonna trim it about right there. Okay. Next thing I'm going to do is with the glue side of the interfacing facing up, facing me, I am going to mark a line halfway down the center of the strip lengthwise, like this. So that would be 7/8 of an inch in from one of the long edges. I'm going to mark a line like this. Okay, now I have a line to match up on the interfacing. I have a line to match up to the line on the pocket. Okay, so we're going to center those lines together. Now, again, just make sure that the glue side of the interfacing is facing you. Okay, so just an important thing to note about this process is we're not actually fusing the interfacing in place until a few steps later. We're sewing the interfacing on first in a rectangle, then we're flipping it to the wrong side of the pocket piece and then fusing it in place, okay? So if you're feeling antsy, wondering when am I gonna fuse this fusible interfacing, not yet, okay? So glue is right side up, and I'm matching the line that I just marked to the line on the pocket pieces. The pocket piece, really, now. It's one little unit. Okay. And I'm going to stop stitching at the end of my marked line on the pocket piece. So I'll just give myself a lower line. Now, next thing I'm going to do is stitch all the way around a 1/4 inch away from that line that I marked on the interfacing. So 1/4 inch away all the way down. I'm going to go a 1/4 inch pass down here, pivot, pivot, and go back up. So I'm going to make a rectangle like this with an open end at the top. Okay, so we're ready to start stitching, and I have my needle in the center. So I'm going to use the left edge of my presser foot to align with the marked line on the interfacing. Okay, there's my lower line, horizontal line I made. I'm just going to go 1/4 inch past. So just using basically a 1/4 inch seam allowance to stitch around this entire thing. Pivot again. Okay, so what you see now is this box shape with an open bottom, closed bottom, open top, 2 lines of stitching. Now we're going to cut open along the center line and diagonally into the lower corners. I'm cutting through all of my layers here. A little bit scary, but not a big deal. Okay, so now that I'm a 1/4 inch away from the bottom, I am going to cut diagonally into each corner where I pivoted, right? So now what we're able to do is turn this fusible interfacing to the wrong side, and we'll work from the wrong side here, wrong side of the pocket unit, and we'll fuse it in place to get a nice clean finish edge here to insert the zipper into. All right, so what's going to happen is we're going to fuse this down, and then you'll see a nice clean edge from the front. So this is going to take me a little while because of, as you saw earlier, this particular interfacing takes a while to fuse, so bear with me. But I'm just going to work to create that nice clean edge. Okay, so I've fused my interfacing in place on the wrong side, and you can see now that what I have is a nice clean edge on my zipper opening right here. So it's a 1/2 inch wide total with this nice finished corners at the bottom. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is work on the zipper guard, which lives closest to your body, then the zipper, then the pants, and it keeps this metal zipper from rubbing up against your skin. So here's what the zipper guard looks like before it's sewn. Okay, so all you have to do in this step is fold it in half lengthwise with the wrong sides together and press it. And then you are going to finish the edges together so that this becomes one unit around the upper edge, this long open edge, and then that lower curved edge. So I handily have one that's already finished right here. So this is what it will look like. This edge is a fold. These edges are serged together. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is baste the zipper to the zipper guard. So grab your zipper, and you are going to open it all the way up, and you're going to position it like so, so that the top of the zipper is 5/8 of an inch below the zipper guard, upper edge of the zipper guard, and that the edge of the zipper is flush with the finished edge of your zipper guard. Okay, so I'm going to place it right about there. And we're going to baste it right down the center of this zipper tape just to secure it to the zipper guard below. So make sure that, because we're working with a metal zipper, I'm just going back to make sure that this stop at the top of the zipper is not right on the 5/8 of an inch seam line, right? Because you don't want to be stitching over that because you will break a needle. So it should be a little bit below there. So maybe this should be, let's say 3/4 of an inch from the upper edge of the zipper guard. All right, so try this again, pinning it in place. And I'm going to put my machine on a long basting stitch. And I'll use a zipper foot here just because I'm going to be stitching so close to metal, but just a long stitch. And placement isn't terribly important here. I'm just stitching down the center of the zipper tape just to attach it to the zipper guard. Okay, so you can see that my zipper tape is just basted to the zipper guard underneath. This stitching is not important, like how it looks is not important because it's not going to show. We're going to cover it up in the next step. Okay, so we're going to take our pocket piece with that clean finished opening edge. We're going to place it on top of the zipper guard, and you want the clean finished edge of the pocket to be just next to the zipper teeth, and then we're going to pin it in place like so. Okay, and you can see that this is going to end just a hair below the bottom zipper stop. Okay, now we are going to edge stitch next to the fold using a zipper foot, being very careful not to stitch on anything metal. Regular stitch length again, 2.5 is fine. And I'm gonna stitch about 1/8 of an inch, kind of between a 1/16 and 1/8 of an inch away from that clean finished edge. And you can see what's happening here is that the zipper is being sandwiched in between, get that out of the way, in between the zipper guard and the pocket. Okay, you could stop here with your needle down and just lift your presser foot and get that bulky pull out of the way. And we're gonna end there. We're gonna backstitch and end there. And now move on to the other side of the zipper. Okay, so now we've sewn one side of the zipper, and now we're going to go sew the other side, so the left side as you're looking at it. So next thing we're going to do is we want to keep the zipper guard free from our pinning and stitching on these steps. So you can just kind of push it out of the way if you want, but what we're going to do is now we're going to take this side of the zipper, the left side of the zipper, and it is going to get pinned to the left side of this zipper opening with the clean finish edge on this side. So if you need the zipper guard in place just for placement's sake, that's fine. But now I'm going to kind of get it out of the way. I'm going to pin the folded edge just next to the zipper teeth, just like we did on the right side. But this side is different because there's no zipper stay there. A little interfacing showing here, but it's not a big deal. Okay, and in this side, I can stitch across the base of the zipper opening, making sure to keep the zipper guard out of the way. All right, so see how that's pinned in place there, and now it's its own side of the zipper, and it's not connected to the zipper stay at all, the zipper guard at all. Okay, so let's move our needle to the other side of the zipper foot, and we're going to stitch just next to the fold again, just like we did on the other side. Again, the only difference is there's no zipper guard on this side. Okay, and here I'm going to stop with my needle down and just get the pull out of the way again. Because it's tough to stitch around. And underneath, I'm keeping the zipper guard folded out to the right so that I don't stitch over it at all. And here you can pivot and stitch along the base of the opening, again, just making sure not to stitch on the zipper guard itself. So I just did sort of an L shape of stitching. Okay, so you can see that my zipper is now fully inserted into this opening, and wasn't that hard, right? It's a really cool construction because now we have the zipper guard attached here which will protect your body from these metal zipper teeth. And then this is going to go completely inside the left pocket. So super cool how this comes together, and now you have that very authentic 50s hidden zipper inside the pocket. Okay, so now we are ready to assemble the pant front, the pocket with the pant front, okay? So take your pant front, remember that's the piece that we did this finished edge of the slant pocket, and you're gonna place it on top of that zippered pocket. And you have a couple match points on this side seam here. They're a little bit, admittedly, perhaps maybe a little confusing if this is your first time sewing a pattern like this. This notch right here matches the seam line on the pocket, so it's going to match 5/8 of an inch up here. And then this notch here would coincide with this piece if it didn't have the turned in seam allowance here. So notches are always on the very edge of a pattern piece, right? We can't put them on the seam line, but that sometimes throws things off once we actually add the seam allowances. So in case you're wondering why it's like that, just align it there. And then at the top here, we are going to make sure that our finished edge covers the zipper and the zipper pull, and that it lays flush at the upper edge here. And we're going to pin these edges together as well, making sure not to pin to the zipper guard below. All right, so we are also going to pin, see this marked line right here? This is where the pocket top stitching is going to happen. We're going to pin these layers together, the pocket itself to the pant front, kind of roughly around that marked top stitching line, like so. But first we're going to baste these in place, okay? So you're going to baste this side seam here. You can use a long stitch and stitch this at 1/2 inch. This is just a temporary stitch to hold these layers in place. There we go, so there's that side seam. And now we're going to do the same thing around the waist, right? So that upper edge. So here, I'd recommend just opening the zipper to get that all out of the way. And again, at 1/2 inch. Being careful not to stitch over any metal underneath. And if you're nervous, you can just use your hand wheel there. Okay, and now what we're going to do is top stitch on this marked pocket line. Okay, so I'm going to use my contrast thread. I'm going to use a good length for top stitching, 3 millimeters is good, and I'm just going to take it really slowly around that curve down here. Okay, so here I am top stitching along my marked line for the pocket, using that 3 millimeter length. And you just need to keep the pocket nice and smooth underneath there. Follow that marked line. Take your pins out as you go. Okay, so now we're coming to that pocket curve, so just take it real slow. You can just do a couple stitches at a time. Put the needle down. You can like pivot a little. Again, just like slightly pivot the work. Okay, so now I've done one line of top stitching. I'm going to do one more, 1/4 of an inch further away from the pocket. Okay, so outside of my first line of top stitching. So 1/4 inch away, just following my first line of stitching. Okay, so now we've done 2 rows of top stitching and we are ready to sew the pant legs together. Okay, so now that we have constructed the pant backs and constructed the pant fronts separately, we're going to sew the inseam and the outseam of each leg, basically constructing a leg tube on each side. So I'm going to put the left front together with the left back, pin along the inseam, and with pants you often have to ease the back into the front at the inseam, so just keep that in mind. There's a little extra slack there. So I'm just going to continue pinning, and then same thing with my outseam. Just match any notches. And pin from top to bottom. And now we're just going to sew these seams. We are going to serge them together or finish them as one, trimming to 3/8 of an inch, and then press the seams towards the back of the pant. Okay, so I've sewn my inseam and my outseam, easing the back into the front. And now I'm going to finish those seams as one, trimming them to 3/8 of an inch, and then just press them towards the back. And then I will have 2 pant legs that we're next going to sew together at the crotch seam. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we have 2 pant legs, so we are going to put them together at that crotch seam. So right sides together, matching the inseams. We're going to pin this entire crotch curve from center front to center back. And I know one of you is going to say it. What you can do is put one pant leg inside the other. Someone always comments that. You can put one pant leg inside the other with them right sides together if this bothers you, right? So then you would then just have an easy curve to sew. I always feel like it's just one little curve. It doesn't bother me. So I'm fine just pinning it like this. And then I'm going to match my yoke seams. That's really important. All the way to center back. Okay, so here I go. I'm going to sew from center front to center back. So 5/8 of an inch. This is my usual stitch length. Okay, so that is your crotch seam. We have what looks like pants now, which is very exciting. You are going to want to finish that crotch seam as one, again, trimming to 3/8 of an inch. And then we're going to move on to the waistband. Okay, so now we're going to start working on the waistband. So you should have your waistband cut in your denim and also cut in your lightweight cotton. So we're going to put the two waistbands right sides together. And we're going to be stitching them together along the two short ends and the long upper edge. So we're sewing 3 sides of the waistband, leaving the lower long curved edge open. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to be stitching at 5/8 of an inch around those 3 edges. And I'm going to be pivoting at the 2 upper corners. So there's my first pivot. Get that thread out of the way. Okay, so now we're going to grade our seam allowances so that the lightweight cotton side is a little narrower. That seam allowance should be about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit taller. And then the denim is going to be about 1/8 of an inch wider than that, like so. And you're also going to want to trim away any excess from the pivot points, so the corners. Okay, so I'm going to go all the way around grading those seam allowances. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do before I turn the waistband right side out is to just do a few clips. See how the upper edge of the waistband is slightly curved. It's not like a crazy curve, but it does have a curve to it. So I'm just going to do a few clips throughout, about every inch or inch and a half, to make sure that it lays flat once I turn it right side out. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the waistband right side out, and you can just kind of poke those corners out. If you have a point presser, this can be a good place to use it. Try to get nice crisp corners here. I also try to use a pin sometimes, that can help. Okay, and then we're gonna press the whole thing flat. And I try to just, you don't want the cotton print to show from the right side, so you might want to try to just press it in slightly. All right, so just make sure you're not going to see the print from the right side, and then just take your time pressing this. You can take a little coaxing at the upper edge. Okay, so now I have my fully pressed waistband, and you can see where my buttonhole mark is here and my 2 button marks there. Now we are going to pin the denim side of the waistband or the outer waistband, right sides together with the jeans. So you're going to put them right sides together, like so, and everything should be flush together at the seam line, right? So when you pin this, it should match at the 5/8 of an inch seam line. And you have some notches to help you match. Here's a notch for center front that matches the crotch seam. And I'm keeping my gingham side here should be kept completely free, and I'm just pinning the 2 denim layers together. Here is a notch for the side seam. And now I'm working on the back. There is another side seam notch to match to the left side seam on the pant. And then the zipper guard edge should be flush with this edge of the waistband. So like so. All right, now I'm just going to put a few pins throughout the back. And now I'm going to go ahead and stitch this. Okay, so you have to work between the 2 layers of the waistband, the cotton and the denim. So I'm just going to open it out here a little bit so that I can get in between those layers to start at the very edge. Back stitch, and then keep stitching all the way around. Make sure you're very careful of those metal parts when you get close to your zipper. Okay, and I'm coming up to where the other side of the zipper is. So again, I'm just being really careful, using my hand wheel right there. Okay, so then when you flip that up, it should all match right there. Okay, so next thing we're going to do is grade that waistline seam, because we've got a few seam allowances there. We are going to trim the pant itself, this waistline seam allowance, so that it's the shorter one. And then the waistband seam allowance so that it's slightly taller. All the way around. So the next thing we're going to do is press these seam allowances up towards the waistband, the ones that we just trimmed. So it can be really helpful to have like a ham or something like this. To have a raised surface there. We're going to do that all the way around, and then we're going to fold down the cotton side of the waistband, so the inner waistband, and fold in the seam allowances like this, so that it just covers up the seam line, the waist seam line, and then press that in place, and we're going to be pinning it from the right side of the pant, and then we're going to top stitch all the way around the waistband. Okay, so this is going to take a little while, but I wanted to explain to you what I'm about to do. I'm just going to turn in all of the seam allowances. Like that. So everything is nice and enclosed. And then I am pinning things in place from the right side, because we're going to be stitching from the right side. Okay, so now that I have pinned the waistband in place all the way around, we're now going to top stitch, really edge stitch the waistband around all four sides of the waistband. So think of the waistband as a long rectangle. You're stitching around every side of it. So I'm going to start at the waistline edge here at the zipper guard. And this is a great place to use your edge stitch foot. And I'm going to align the blade of the foot with my seam, and then the stitching is going to be about 1/8 of an inch, or a little bit less, to the right of the seam. And I'm just as we go, I'm just making sure that with my right hand, I'm checking underneath and making sure that the seam allowance of my gingham cotton is getting caught in my stitching here. Okay, everyone, so we are at the point where we are going to apply the buttons on the waistband. So I went ahead and made my buttonhole at the mark on the overlap side of the waistband. And you should go ahead and do the same. Every machine is different when it comes to buttonholes, so just to follow your manual, take it slow, and you want to get a buttonhole that's big enough for your jeans button to pass through. Now we're going to set the jean buttons as marked. So I have two little yellow marks here and here for those two adjustable buttons on the waistband. So jeans buttons, they do require a little bit, it's not just sewing on a button by hand. They do require a little bit of hardware, and there are lots of methods out there and some that are a little more, require less machinery than we're going to show you. So if you're interested to see other methods or methods that don't require something like this table press, there's a ton of information out there. We have really fallen in love with this cam snap table press in the studio. It does rivets, grommets, jeans buttons, and hole punches, all sorts of stuff. So we've been using it a lot. Snaps for the Patsy blouse. So would recommend that you get one if you're interested, if you do a lot of sewing like this. It's not necessary, but we did just want to demonstrate because it's really fun to see how it works. Okay, so we're going to start with the hole punch to make the holes for the buttons that they get inserted into. So this is a separate process, and for everything that you do on the Cam Snap, and this is the confusing part about it, but on the Cam Snap website they have so much great information. For every process that you do, you need different dies, and the dies are these pieces that go in this bottom part and then the top part. So, and it's kind of like a clampy thing like this. There's a different die on either side depending on what you're doing and what size hardware you're using. Okay, so just know that. For punching a hole, you need this guy on the bottom, and then there's the hole punch that screws in to the top. And we're using a 2.5 millimeter hole punch. And we are going to make holes on my little yellow dots. You do have to use a little force here. And now I have a little punched hole there. And then the same thing here. So two tiny little holes to put the buttons into. Okay, so now we're going to change out our dies to the jean button dies. So this can go to the side, and make sure you put everything back in the little baggie that it came in, because otherwise it's very easy to get confused about what these pieces are. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we have this die that goes in the base for the jeans button, and then this bigger guy that screws into the top. Okay, and like I said way back in the beginning of the video, jeans buttons have two parts to them. The cute decorative part that you see from the top, and then this little screw guy. These are all guys. The screw guy goes on the bottom. So we're going to put the screw half through your punched hole, like this. And then the decorative button gets pressed up into the upper die. And now we're going to place them in between the layers. And for this one, you really need to use a lot of strength to make sure that your jeans buttons don't come off down the road. But there you go. You have this beautiful, very, very sturdy, strong button. So I'm going to do the second one. And look how professional looking it is. Just like jeans you would buy in a store or a vintage store. Same thing on this side. You just got to kind of line them up. And just do this a few times. Okay, so just make sure, that's my little hole. Make sure they're really in there, but now you have two buttons that will form that adjustable waistband. Okay, it's time to make your belt loops. So as discussed earlier, we have this one long piece that's going to become 5 little belt loops. So you're going to want to finish each of the long edges of this piece. And now we're going to turn in 1/4 inch and press. So for me, that's pretty much just turning in the serging. A little steam so it stays pressed. Okay, so there's one side, now we'll do the other. So they should kind of meet there in the middle. Okay, I'm just gonna fix where I have my notch. It's looking a little crazy, so I'm just gonna fix that. Okay, and now we're going to edge stitch an eighth of an inch down each of these long edges. One side, I'm going to finish the other now. Okay, it's twisting a little, so I'm just going to press it flat again. And now I can cut these into the 5 belt loops along those marked lines. Okay, and now I'm going to take these to the serger and finish each of these short ends. Okay, so I've finished the short ends of each belt loop and also pressed the short ends 1/4 inch. Okay, so you have this little shape like this for the belt loops. Now I want to talk briefly about belt loop placement. We did 5 belt loops, but you can, of course, add more. You could do no belt loops. It's up to you. If you're a regular belt wearer, you might want more belt loops. So, but that's always an option to use to make more of these. But the placement that we did was having a loop to the outside of each line of pocket stitching. So one here, and then just behind the side seam, right? You don't want to see the loop to the side of your pant when you're, facing front. So you want it to be just to the back. And then one at center back, right on the center back seam, okay, for a total of 5. So like I said, you can do more, you can do none, but here's how you sew them on. And there are marks on the pattern pieces, by the way, but you can also decide on your own placement. So my first one is going to go just to the inside of this stitching, the pocket stitching. So I'm going to kind of place it there, and what I'm going to do is turn up the belt loop, like open it up now. So the upper fold here should be aligned with the edge stitching on the top of the waistband, right? So I'm going to pin that in place. And now I'm going to stitch it right there. oops, so that my line of stitching matches the waistband top stitching. And you can stitch back and forth to really reinforce it. And now I'm going to turn it down and top stitch the top of the loop, right? And then top stitch the bottom. Okay, thanks. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the loop down and I am going to edge stitch the top of it so it's reinforced twice on this side. Like so. And then on the bottom, I'm just going to turn it in and stitch it once. And again, you can reinforce it kind of back and forth a few times. So it is time to rivet. So we're going to be using the cam press again. And first let's talk about the rivet placement. So you're going to do one at the top of each front pocket, at the bottom. And keep in mind this goes through all the layers. You're not just going through this top layer here. It's to hold all the layers together at the stress points. At the stress points at the top and bottom. Same on this side. On the zipper side, it's only through these two layers though. Bottom here through all layers. And then finally you're going to do one on the outer edges of the back pockets between those two rows of top stitching there. Okay, so those are the most common places for rivets. That's why we place them there. And rivets are optional, so if you're feeling like you just can't handle it for your first pair, that's totally fine. You can always just do a little extra reinforcement stitching at those pressure points, stress points to reinforce it a little bit. Okay, so just like with the jeans buttons, we are going to be starting with a hole punch. Same size, the 2.5. So I'm using those same dies. So let me show you here through the zipper side, just because that's the easiest side for me to navigate. So I'm going to make a hole right there. Okay, so one hole there, and then down here I'm going to do it through all the layers. Okay, there we go. So I'm just going to show you one or two rivets. Okay, so you would press all your holes and then you would go to the rivet die, which looks like this on the bottom side and like this on the top. So you always have to screw in the top press or die, whatever it's called. Okay, and rivets look like this. Let me bring them over here. There is one side that has this long sort of base, and then the other side is more flat. Okay, so the longer side, you are going to insert through the right side, through the hole, and then this is the back. It's going to click on, whoops, keep losing it. It's going to click onto the back. All right, so you're going to click it in place yourself, and then we're going to use the cam snap press just to fully secure it. So you're just going to squeeze that between the layers, and there is your first beautiful rivet. So fun. You can do all of these as sort of an assembly line, you know, like make your holes, then place the rivets in the holes, then finally do them all in a row on the press machine. But I'm just showing you each step for just 2 of these. There's the back. Okay, so there you go. There's the pocket reinforced at the top and the bottom with the rivets, and I'm going to continue on with the riveting, but you really just need to see 2 of them. So there you go. That was 2 different things that we did with the cam snap table press, and like I said, you can also do things like snaps and grommets, so we've used it a lot. So really recommend this. So I hope you've enjoyed seeing how it works. Okay, so now we are ready for really the final step, which is to sew the cuff facing to your jeans. Now, if you're not going to be doing a cute little contrast cuff facing, you can also just hem your jean by turning it up and top stitching following the directions. But I'm going to show you how to do this cuff facing because it's really cute and fun, and like I said, very vintage. So these are just rectangles that you are going to sew into a ring by sewing right sides together at the short end. And I'm going to stitch this at 5/8 of an inch. And I'm going to press this open. Okay, so I now have 2 of these, and I'm going to sew this to the hem of the pant. Now the seam on the cuff, we're going to put these right sides together, and the seam of the cuff should match the inseam of the pant. And now I'm going to stitch at 5/8 of an inch all around the hem. Okay, and now we can grade these seam allowances. I would grade the cuffs a little shorter and the pant itself a little taller. Okay, and now we are going to turn the cuff to the wrong side of the pants. So flip it into the inside. And now we're going to get a nice crisp edge here. So just roll the seam line out like that. And press it all the way around. Okay, so we've got a nice clean edge there. And now probably the easiest way to do this is from the inside. So if we turn the pant leg wrong side out. What we're going to do is stitch it in place, and you can pin it in place around the upper edge. Along this upper edge. And this would be a good place to use thread that matches your denim so that you can also wear the pant uncuffed and not see this line of stitching. But I'm not too worried about that, because who wouldn't want to see this cute little gingham cuff? So, you know, I might do this more like a 1/4 inch from the top. As you can see, it doesn't really matter too much. 1/4 inch from the top so that I can use the edge of my presser foot as my guide here, so it's consistent all the way around. Go. Trim off your threads. Okay, so now when I go to wear the pant, what you can do is get a nice little cuff turned out there, which will cover that line of stitching we just did. And look how adorable that looks. So like I said, make a little matching blouse to go with this, a Rita blouse or your Patsy blouse would be so cute. And that is your finished cuff. Okay, everyone, so there are your finished Marilyn jeans. I hope that you have loved seeing them come together. And if you were intimidated by making jeans before, I hope you're not now, because it's really not that scary and it's actually really fun. So we've learned so much today, from how to do this denim top stitching to what I think is, you know, the most important feature of the Marilyn jeans, which is this authentically vintage hidden zipper inside the left front pocket. We have learned all about jeans buttons and rivets and making that adorable contrast cuff. So I hope you really love learning all of this fabulous material on sewing denim. And I do hope that you will make your own Marilyn jeans, and please tag me when you do. I would love to see your version. Thanks so much for watching. I will see you next time. Goodbye.